Hey, what's going on, guys? Redbeard here from the Self-Reliance Self-Preservation Guild with a winter hardy soup recipe for you. It's a great way to use up some of your cold hardy root vegetables that you may have stored up. And, well, a day like today, it's like minus 12, minus 15 out there. You know, that's, I don't know, minus 5, minus 6 for the Americans in the Fahrenheit. It's pretty cold out there, so it's a nice day to have a warm, hearty, substantial soup. And the great thing about this, if you are buying the ingredients for this soup, it can be very cheap. I'm choosing to put some bacon and in the end some cheddar cheese into the soup, but if you were to leave it with the root vegetables and the leeks, the onion, it's a very hearty soup, very delicious and easy to make, and like I said, it's cheap to make as well. So I'll start assembling the ingredients. We'll start by getting the bacon cut up and rendered off in the pan. We'll pull it out, save the oils to fry our vegetables up and get them some color on them, and then we'll carry on from there. So stay tuned. It's important to start with a sharp knife, especially when you're slicing something soft like bacon. So you want to make sure you got a good edge on your knife. This one's pretty sharp, but I'll just give it a bit of a sharpening on the honing rod. Give it a little bit of a hone. Just a few swipes back and forth at the appropriate angle. Pick the edge up. You can hear that's quite sharp. So get into the bacon here. This is just over a pound. I don't need to use that much. Smells good. I'll take maybe half of that out. Just lay that down. Take half here. Tuck that bit in here. You can easily slice through bacon, you know you've got a decently sharp knife, especially bacon that's come to temperature like this. It's not as cold and rigid. It's quite loose. So we'll just cut that into little lardons, which is the French word for little chunks, when it comes to pork especially. Alright. This is some decent bacon. It's got some nice dark smoke ring on it. We'll get that into our pan, get some heat on there, and get that frying up. Good rule of thumb to follow when you're doing any sort of sauteing is nothing goes into a cold pan, so I'll get my pan nice and warm. Once I get that hot, put in the bacon. I want to hear that nice big sizzle. That tells us the pan's ready to accept food without it all going gray and sticky and gross. So here, get the sizzle going. That's what we want. Get all that bacon in there. We'll get that rendering off. I'll start processing the vegetable matter. Don't worry if you get a little bit of sticking, it's alright. I'm just going to scrape it off anyways. Just add flavor into the final product. We'll get the onion ready. Bacon's starting to render down, get cooked up a little bit, starts to drop its oil. We'll get it all crisped up and pull it out and carry on with the soup from there. So we're going to process leeks now. Now, the thing with leeks is they're grown in the sand. They often get sand in between the layers. It's a big layer of onion discs, sort of. So what we do is we'll cut that in half, all down the middle. That exposes all the surfaces, and now we can cut them into whatever size pieces, whether it's skinny rings or big chunks. And we can put them in a bowl of cold water and rinse the sand out. All the sand will sink to the bottom, and you can pull the leeks out and keep them clean. And that keeps your soup from getting unnecessarily gritty. So I'm going to cut these into about 3/4 inch chunks, 1/2 inch chunks or so. If you haven't used leeks before, they're sort of in the onion family, of course, and they're sort of like a giant green onion. A thick skin that breaks down and cooks soft, has a mild onion flavor and a nice sweetness. So we've got our leeks washed up here, cut in cold water in a bowl. Just sort of break them apart, get all through the layers. And you'll see when you pull them out, there'll be some sand at the bottom. Sometimes worse than others. Sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. So we'll get some potatoes peeled while we wait for that and finish this bacon up. Alright, so our bacon is just about finished being rendered. Turn it down a touch. I'm going to cut up some of the other vegetables that we'll need to saute in the bacon fat reserve. So we'll do our onion, sort of a rough, large chop. We've got our leeks there, and we're going to do our carrots. Pretty rough chop as well. We're going to give this kind of a puree finish. Not a real smooth puree, but a rough sort of puree with a hand blender. But we'll open these carrots up enough to get some surface area exposed so we can get some color on them. Where there's color, there's flavor. Alright, so we got all the bacon out, nice and dark and crisp. Not burnt, but nice and crispy and crunchy, which is what we're going to want in this soup. So now we've got just a nice amount of oil, fat from the bacon left in there. Enough to get these carrots and onions a bit of color on them. So we'll do that. Turn this up a bit. There's that nice sizzle we want to hear. While we're doing that, we'll get these potatoes cut up into pieces. That's smelling good. I'm going to give those potatoes a rinse and then we'll just carry on from there. And once I start picking up some color on these vegetables, the carrots and onions, I'm going to crank the heat up and then add in the leeks. The reason I crank the heat because the leeks are all wet and I don't want them to sit there and sweat and stew. I want that water to evaporate quickly so that they can start to color up as well. And you'll never pick up color when you're all soggy. So scoop out these leeks now. Try to get as much of the bulk of the water off them. Of course, you can let these drip dry through a colander, paper towel them off if you want. I don't mind the extra step of cooking off the water. We'll saute this veg up, get some color on the leeks, and then we've got basically the bulk of our flavor stacking going on. We've got our mirepoix of carrots, onions, and leeks. Sometimes you can use celery in there. I'm going to use a bit of celery seed for that flavor to miss that I'm in the celery that I'm missing. Some of the other spices I'll use will be some fresh nutmeg, a bit of dry dill, and a bit of dry thyme. If I had fresh still surviving in my garden, I'd be using that, but everything is now buried in snow. Right in with 1 liter of chicken broth. And I have a little bit of vegetable stock and rabbit stock in there as well. Let those all kind of come together and up to a boil, and then I'll start adding the potatoes in. As the soup's coming up to a boil, I think I'll take this time and I'll add in my dried spices. I've already added in my thyme and my white pepper. I'm going to add about a half a tablespoon of dried dill. Maybe a little less. There we go. And nutmeg. I buy fresh nutmeg at the bulk store. It's just a big nut sort of thing. Looks like a chocolate covered almond. If you have a little microplane or a fine zester, you can just grate it in. It's so much nicer than the pre-ground stuff. It has a sweeter, earthier taste than the dry stuff. So I add about a half of a nutmeg. It's got a cool pattern inside. This one still has some nice oils, even though it's a couple years old. It stays very fresh in its whole form. We'll add that in. It's got a beautiful smell, almost similar to a smell of a parsnip or a strong, fresh carrot. So it lends itself really nice to root vegetables, and it goes very well with potatoes. As we're coming up to a boil now, I'll add in my diced potatoes. We'll get that all softening up, cooking down. Adjust the seasoning, and then we will puree it to a rough, coarse consistency. So now that we've got the vegetables all cooked soft, you can see that by the potatoes. They start to go sort of a translucent color and they can break apart real easy. So now I'm going to take my little hand blender and I'm going to give this a rough puree. I don't want to turn it to like liquid. I want it to be sort of coarse, as chunky as you like it, basically. Just sort of start slow with a couple buzzes, buzz up the big chunks. And what you end up with is a sort of a chunky, almost, it's not quite baby food, but it's like baby food, but it's good. It's very thick and warm, when you're cold. That's about it. That's about where I like to take it to. Sort of thick, almost stew-like, but there's still, some obvious, you can see what you're eating, and you can taste the different vegetables in there. Just keep down. So we'll just adjust the seasoning, see how it tastes. Hot. Ooh. So it needs some salt. Not much else. It's pretty good. A little bit more pepper maybe. White, black pepper. They're both good. A little cayenne is nice if you like a little bit more heat. Great to add to a winter soup. Gives you that sort of warm, heat feeling through your body. Speeds up your metabolism, helps you warm up. It's a good idea to add to soups. This with some fresh, crusty bread and butter, it's amazing. It's just an amazing winter meal. So it's not a pretty soup, maybe not something you're going to serve with your 5-course meal, but as far as just comfort food goes, hearty, filling, delicious. World's smallest ladle. Finishing touch, a little bit of that bacon that we fried up before, right across the top there. Beautiful. That's beautiful stuff. Awesome soup. Thanks for watching, guys. It's RedBeard. Stay tuned for the next video.